Mr. President, can you explain why you did not condemn those 8 groups by name over the weekend?
They've been condemned. They have been condemned.
And why are we not having a press conference today? You said on Friday we'd have a press conference.
We had a press conference. We just had a press conference.
Can we ask you some more questions, sir?
It doesn't bother me at all, but I like real news, not fake news. Give fake news. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
This is my hot take on the Democrat FISA memo that was just released a few hours ago. I have not read through it yet. I've seen a little bit of H.A. Goodman's response to it, but I really wasn't paying attention, so I hope I'm not overlapping his comments too much. All right, let's get started. 2. All members of the House of Representatives from HPSCI minority, date January 29, 2018, regarding correcting the record, are we correcting the record, the Russia investigations? The HPSCI majority's move to release the House of Representatives its allegations, okay, that's screwed up right there, against the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the Department of Justice, DOJ, is a transparent effort to undermine those agencies, the Special Counsel, and Congress's investigations. It also risks public exposure of sensitive sources and methods for no legitimate purpose. Funny coming from the Democrats that public exposure of sensitive sources. This memo had to be sent back to the committee because of all the intelligence and other sensitive sources that it listed when it tried to publish this the first time. So pot kettle black a little bit, even though if you look at the Republican response, the majority memo, it says nothing when it comes to talking about sources or procedures that in any way risked future endeavors. So I really don't know where they're coming from with this. And as far as undermining these agencies, they've done a pretty good job of undermining themselves so far. So again, I really don't see where they're getting off using this language. To continue, FBI and DOJ officials did not abuse the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA process, omit material information, or subvert this vital tool to spy on the Trump campaign. Didn't they? All right, prove it. In fact, DOJ and the FBI would have been remiss in their duty to protect the country had they not sought a FISA warrant and repeated renewals to conduct temporary surveillance of Carter Page, someone the FBI assessed to be an agent of the Russian government. If it was so temporary, why was it often repeated? It seems to me if you keep doing it over and over again, it's not necessarily temporary. To continue. In fact, DOJ and the FBI would have been remiss in their duty to protect this country had they not sought a FISA warrant and repeated renewals to conduct temporary surveillance of Carter Page, someone the FBI assessed to be an agent of the Russian government. Okay, if they assessed him to be an agent, why hasn't he been charged as being an agent of the Russian government? He's still walking around free. He's making news reports. He's even considering suing these people if he hasn't already. So where's the beef? And this repeated renewals to conduct temporary surveillance, if it's repeated and renewed, then it's really not temporary, is it? It's pretty much an ongoing investigation. And as H.A. said in his video, there's no crime to be investigated. Yes, Carter Page kind of walked around with a lot of Russians, and he made some bold statements that I have heard pop up, but he in no way was ever an agent of the Russian government. In fact, there's been a report that he helped in a sting operation against some Soviet spies, although I've heard some people refute that, so let's lay that as a maybe. DOJ met the rigor, transparency, and evidentiary bias, underlined here, needed to meet FISA's probable cause requirement by demonstrating, bullet point, contemporaneous evidence of Russia's election interference. Yeah, let's talk about that. If it was contemporaneous and there was evidence of it, why didn't anybody do anything during the Obama administration? Oh, that's right. They didn't want to seem like they were throwing the election or interfering in it. So you've got Russians supposedly interfering in the election, but the United States can't do anything about it? That's pretty pathetic. Okay, next one. Concerning Russian links and outreach to Trump campaign officials, prove it. Again, there's some history of him being around Russians, but just because you have a history with intelligence doesn't mean you're compromised by the intelligence or that you're a part of it. Anyone who's talked to Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, could be accused of having suspicious activities or history with Russian intelligence. In fact, that's the way the Democrats want it. If they talk to Kislyak, he's the ambassador. If the Republicans, Trump especially, or Sessions talks to Kislyak, then he's a Russian agent. So that knife only cuts one way, folks. And last one here, redacted, Page's suspicious activities in 2016, including in Moscow. How many pieces of the Republican or the Nunez memo were redacted? I don't remember there being that many. We've only got a couple paragraphs, and already there's a big one in one of their major points. All right. The committee's minority has therefore prepared this memorandum to correct the record. Correct the record. I wonder if they realize what they're tying themselves into when they use that statement. Christopher Steele's raw intelligence reporting did not inform the FBI's decision to initiate its counterintelligence investigation in late July 2016. In fact, the FBI's closely held investigative team only received Steele's reporting in mid-September, more than 7 weeks later. The FBI and subsequently the special counsel's investigation into links between the Russian government and Trump campaign associates has been based on troubling law enforcement and intelligence information unrelated to the quote-unquote dossier. Yeah, I think they're talking about Papadopoulos' drunk conversation with the Australian, I believe, ambassador. That's their hard evidence. If things were that serious, then why weren't they looking into Page sooner? To continue. DOJ's October 21st, 2016 FISA application and 3 subsequent renewals carefully outlined for the court a multi-pronged rationale for surveilling Page, who at the time of the first application was no longer with the Trump campaign. DOJ detailed Page's past relationships with Russian spies and interaction with Russian officials during the 2016 campaign. So there you go. Spies, prove it. I shouldn't say prove it. Let's just say this. Just because they're known as spies doesn't mean they also have other functions. And Carter Page could have definitely been interacting with them with their outboard functions, with their non-spy functions. Yes, they could have been spies, but that doesn't mean he was spying with them, and that doesn't mean that he was coordinating with them as spies. And of course, Russian officials. Suddenly, it's not legal to talk to Russian officials. Bill Clinton went to Moscow to talk to Putin, even though the State Department did not give him clearance to do so. They didn't say he couldn't do it, but he went before they could give him clearance at all. And let's not talk about that $500,000 speaking fee that he got for talking to a Russian bank directly tied to Putin. No. But suddenly, if Carter Page is out doing it, if someone associated with if someone associated with the Trump campaign had something to do with it, then suddenly it's a bad thing, and you can't talk to Russian officials. Let's talk about the Russian restart again. Oh, wait, that ended when Trump started running. I forgot. Okay, redacted. DOJ cited multiple sources to support the case for surveilling Page, but made only narrow use of information from Steele sources about Page's specific activities in 2016, chiefly his suspected July 2016 meetings in Moscow with Russian officials. Again, first of all, these were suspected meetings. They were not proven to have happened. And again, they were Russian officials. They weren't even spies this time. So how is that illegal? How does meeting with a Russian official suddenly vault you to the point of where a FISA warrant can not only be asked for, but given, and given multiple times? Somebody needs to look into that. And I believe Sessions has said that the DOJ is going to look into the FISA court. I hope it's swift and I hope it's comprehensive. And this made only narrow use of information? Prove it. Where do you have in this that he only made that the FISA court, made only narrow use of that information? That's a judgment call on your part. I don't see anything to back that up yet. Maybe you'll get into that later, but personally, I seriously doubt it. We'll see. And redacted again. In fact, the FBI interviewed Page in March 2016 about his contact with Russian intelligence, the very month candidate Donald Trump named him a foreign policy advisor. Okay, so let's go back to this. They said that the investigative team only received Steele's reporting in mid-September. But now they're saying that they interviewed him in March 2016 about his contact with Russian intelligence. So they were already looking at him. They were just looking for an excuse to go after him. They had nothing specific. Suddenly the Steele dossier comes along. And how is that adding any more information to what they already had? A lot, I would say, a whole lot. So suddenly these investigations before the campaign, I should say at the beginning of the campaign, suddenly became very, very important in September. That's right in line with when Steele came in. As DOJ informed the court in subsequent renewals, redacted, Steele's reporting about Page's Moscow meetings, redacted. DOJ's application did not otherwise rely on Steele reporting, including any salacious allegations about Trump and the FBI never paid Steele for this reporting. While explaining why the FBI viewed Steele's reporting and sources as reliable and credible, what sources? The ones he never met with? The ones that were through second parties the entire time? And his reporting, what in that document has been verified besides things that are in the public sphere, things that are in the public record? Nothing. Not one thing that Steele reported that is anywhere salacious or secretive or anything like that. None of that has been proven. It's all been disproven for the most part. Like the pissing dossier part of it. I should say the piss part of the dossier. I heard that there was no such no such suite as a presidential suite in that hotel. So he didn't even get the room right, much less what happened in it. Let me repeat that. While explaining why the FBI viewed Steele's reporting and sources as reliable and credible, DOJ also disclosed Steele's prior relationship with the FBI. Well, they may have revealed the prior relationship, but let's see here. The fact of and reason for his termination as a source, you're going to have to prove that, and the assessed political motivation of those who hired him. The assessed political motivation, that's incredibly vague. Did it say this was paid for by the DNC and the Hillary campaign? Or did it just say this was opposition research, but we have full confidence behind it, which, as it says here, the fact and reason of his termination as a source, all they would have had to say was he outed himself as a source. That's it. That's all they had to say. They would not have had to say that he was shopping around with this dossier for a long time before they used it as a basis for the FISA warrant, that it went to such places as CNN and other quote-unquote credible news outlets. The fact that BuzzFeed was the one who reported it, yeah, that just goes to show what kind of outlet he finally found an avenue for it. And as HA mentioned in his video, you can expect BuzzFeed to be gone within a certain period of time. They've got so many lawsuits against them, and they're desperate. They're suing the DNC for access to their server records to show that, in fact, there was Russian meddling in the server, that it was hacked by the Russians. And we all know it wasn't. We all know it was an inside job. The data rate transfer proved it. So, next bullet point. The committee's majority memorandum, which draws selectively on highly sensitive classified information, includes other distortions and misrepresentations that are contradicted by the underlying classified documents, which the vast majority of members of the committee and the House have not had the opportunity to review, and which Chairman Nunez chose not to read himself, footnote 1. We'll get to that footnote, but seriously, the classified documents, you can't just walk down there and have the entire committee go and read them. They're classified for a reason. They allowed one person from the committee to go down there and read them and then report those results, that data to the committee, and that was Trey Gowdy. Now, if they're saying that just because Trey Gowdy was the only one who got to look at it, that none of that information is valid, that's a bunch of crap, and we all know it. That's just sour grapes. And the fact that Chairman Nunez chose not to read himself, no. They had to pick one person from the committee to go down there, and Nunez picked Gowdy. Gowdy has a lot of experience as a prosecutor. He's a very detail-oriented man. He knew what to do, and he knew how to do it. The fact that Schiff did not get to go down there in no way impugns the credibility of the Nunez menu. In fact, in my opinion, it supports it. Background. On January 18, 2018, the committee majority, during an unrelated business meeting, forced a surprise vote to release to the full House a profoundly misleading memorandum alleging serious abuses by the FBI and DOJ. Profoundly misleading how? You've yet to prove any of that is false. Any of it. This right here is basically a he said, she said kind of thing, and your stuff is very vague so far, as opposed to the Nunez memo, which was quite specific. Thank you very much. Let's see. Release profoundly misleading memo. Majority staff drafted the document in secret on behalf of Chairman Devin Nunez and reportedly with guidance and input from Representative Trey Gowdy, and then rushed a party line vote, without prior notice. Reportedly with guidance and input from Trey Gowdy. That's kind of a, muddying the water there, or using vague language to impugn non-credibility on Trey Gowdy. It was with guidance and input from Trey Gowdy because Gowdy was the only one who could look at it. So it's not bad information, Schiff. It's actually factual information brought forward by a very respected member of Congress, unlike yourself. And as far as rushing a party line without prior notice, hey, those are politics. Sour grapes, dude, sour grapes. This was by design. The overwhelming majority of committee members never received DOJ authorization to access the underlying classified information and therefore could not judge the veracity of Chairman Nunez's claims. Yeah? Due to sensitive sources and methods, DOJ provided access only to the committee's chair and ranking member or respective designees and limited staff to facilitate the committee's investigation into Russia's covert campaign to influence the 2016 U.S. elections. Footnote 2. No. It was not about the covert campaign to influence the 2016 elections. This was about a unlawful FISA warrant being taken out against an American citizen for dubious, if not incredulous, reasons. So once again, trying to rewrite the narrative to fit a Democrat point of view. And again here, due to sensitive sources and methods, DOJ provided access only to the committee's chair and ranking member or representative designees. So right there, you're part of the committee. In fact, the entire committee, except for Trey Gowdy, was not going to get access to those records because they are classified and they are underlying classified information. What are you going to do, man? You say that only Trey Gowdy was allowed to read it, therefore it's suspicious, but then you right afterwards say that the DOJ only provided access to one member and limited staff to facilitate the investigation. That's pathetic, Schiff. That's absolutely pathetic. As DOJ has confirmed publicly, it did not authorize the broader release of this information within Congress or to the public, and Chairman Nunez refused to allow the DOJ and the FBI to review his document until he permitted the FBI director to see it for the first time in HPSCI's secure spaces late on Sunday, January 28th, 10 days after disclosure to the House. So no one got to see it, but then the FBI director got to see it. And the FBI director got to have input into that document. There were, I think, a sentence or a reclarification of a certain part of the document allowed by Nunez because he respects the head of the FBI. So again, these sour grapes about the memo, and right there, the DOJ has confirmed publicly it did not authorize the broader release of this information within Congress or to the public. Wah. And why didn't Nunez allow the DOJ and the FBI to review it at first? Because it was coming out against the DOJ and the FBI. If I'm building a case against someone until it comes to the discovery phase, I'm not showing them my hand. I'm not saying, hey, here's some evidence that I dug up on you, and I'm going to release it to Congress and then to the president, possibly for release to the public. Do you want to have a go at it maybe before I can get all the information together and you can possibly hide some of the stuff I was just told I could use? No. It doesn't work that way, Schiff. All right. FBI's counterintelligence investigation. In its October 2016 FISA application and subsequent renewals, DOJ accurately informed the court that the FBI initiated its counterintelligence investigation on July 31st, 2016, after receiving information, redacted, George Papadopoulos revealed, redacted, that individuals linked to Russia who took interest in Papadopoulos as a Trump, redacted, footnote 4. Good Lord, man, can't you put anything out there? Papadopoulos had a drunken conversation with an Australian bureaucrat. The Australian bureaucrat reported it because he's supposed to report when someone tells him about interactions with foreign governments that could be hostile. And the FBI went nuts. It was a drunken conversation. Papadopoulos was nothing in the campaign. He was consistently rebuffed by Sessions and others when he tried to set up Soviet, that's how old I am, meetings with Russians, saying that he had inside information, when in fact, it's pretty obvious he was just blowing himself up. He really had nothing to go for. And that's why they didn't give him any time of day. None. But somehow, this disclosure is so massive, so earth-shattering, that the FBI has to launch an investigation into Russian meddling. And why was there an investigation into Russian meddling in the first place? Because the Hillary campaign said outright, and it's in the wiki memos and emails, says outright that if they lose to Trump, they're going to need a backup plan. So let's blame the Russians and let's start now. That's out there. That was known. And yet the FBI, I guess they didn't get that memo. Who knows? Papadopoulos' disclosure, shouldn't there only be an apostrophe, not another S? No one can write anymore. Papadopoulos' disclosure, moreover, occurred against the backdrop of Russia's aggressive, covert campaign to influence our elections, which the FBI was already monitoring. You mean those 13 trolls who committed wire fraud and identity theft, and that's it? We've got millions of illegal aliens in this country committing wire fraud and identity theft every day. Yet, the FBI doesn't seem to be really concerned about that. But 13 Russian trolls, that's big news. They spent, like $30,000 on Facebook ads in a campaign where the combined operations came close to $2 billion. That's significant. And as we heard last week from the DOJ, even though they rolled up these trolls, none of whom are ever going to see trial, they're only indicted, there was no tampering with the election to the point where it changed anything. They did nothing. Hell, they put together anti-Trump rallies. But this was a aggressive, covert campaign, according to Schiff. And of course, it's in bold, which the FBI was already monitoring. Again, what did they do? Nothing. We would later learn in Papadopoulos' plea that the information the Russians could assist by anonymously releasing were thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. The Russians did not release those, and we all know that. DOJ told the court the truth. Its representation was consistent with the FBI's underlying investigative record, which current and former senior officials later corroborated in extensive committee testimony. Christopher Steele's reporting, which he began to share with an FBI agent, redacted, through the end of October 2016, played no role in launching the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference and links to the Trump campaign. Then why was the dossier used in the FISA warrant, which you said came in mid-September, I believe? And it wasn't just Christopher Steele sharing this information with the FBI. We all know that Bruce Orr, whose wife Nellie worked for Fusion GPS, the progenitor of this dossier, quote unquote, was in fact using her connections with Fusion GPS to push that narrative, to push that document into the DOJ's hands. And once it was there, it had to go to the FBI. That's the way it works. So the fact that Steele just came up to the FBI and said, hey, I got some really good information on Trump. You guys should look into this. No. That's been proven that it hasn't worked that way. Jesus, Schiff, can you not lie every damn time you open your typewriter? Again, that's how old I am. In fact, Steele's reporting did not reach the counterintelligence team investigating Russia at FBI headquarters until mid-September 2016, more than 7 weeks after the FBI opened its investigation, because the probe's existence was so closely held within the FBI. You already said that. And we just proved that's wrong, so ridiculous. By campaign, redacted. And former campaign foreign policy Carter Page. Former. As committee testimony bears out, the FBI would have continued its investigation, including against redacted individuals, even if it had never received information from Steele, never applied for a FISA warrant against Page, or if the FISC had rejected the application. Well, yeah, the FBI would have continued the investigation, but they never would have gotten the FISA warrant without the Steele dossier. So even if it had never received information from Steele, never applied for a FISA warrant, or if it had been rejected, that's pathetic. All of those things happened. So ifs make no sense. You don't respect the actual facts here. So what the FBI would have continued investigating. They certainly weren't doing anything about it. It took Mueller to bring out the indictments. It took the Mueller probe. And we can see that the Mueller probe is never getting closer to Trump. In fact, it's getting farther away every time they roll something out. Man, I don't even know what Schiff's trying to do here. DOJ's FISA application and renewals. The initial warrant application and subsequent renewals received independent scrutiny and approval by 4 different federal judges, 2 of whom had to be scratched out, 2 of whom were appointed by President George W. Bush and 1 by President Ronald Reagan. Right here it says in the margin, 1 by George H.W. Bush. So? Doesn't mean their politics have changed over the years. Doesn't mean that H.W. Reagan made a mistake in appointing them. We've all seen the complete cheerleading for the Democrat Party that the courts are doing these days. So the fact that 2 of these guys were appointed, by Republicans doesn't carry a lot of water as far as I'm concerned. People keep pointing out that Mueller is a Republican. Yeah, Republican with a small r. You ever hear of a never-Trumper? I'm sure Mueller had nothing to do with any of those people. DOJ first applied to the FISC on October 21st, 2016, for a warrant to permit the FBI to initiate electronic surveillance and physical search of Page for a warrant, for 90 days, consistent with FISA requirements. The court approved 3 renewals, again, temporary, in early January 2017, early April 2017, and late June 2017, which authorized the FBI to maintain surveillance on Page until late September 2017. So this went from October 21st, 2016 to late September 2017. And I'll use that word again. Temporary? Are you I almost cursed there. Are you freaking kidding me? Senior DOJ and FBI officials appointed by the Obama and Trump administrations, including acting Attorney General Dan Buente and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, certified the applications with the court. Doesn't mean those applications weren't false. Doesn't mean those applications weren't tainted. You could have pulled the wool over Rosenstein's eyes and said, hey, we've got this supremely credible dossier here. We've got all this great information that we rolled up on Papadopoulos and Page. What did you get Papadopoulos for, by the way? A procedural crime, lying. Nothing to do with the Russians at all. Nothing. And Page, after all that surveillance, never arrested, never charged. Just had his name dragged through the mud. And again, FISA was not used to spy on Trump or his campaign. Yeah, there were two FISA applications passed down by the FBI against Trump Tower. One in, I believe, January of 2016, and the other in February. It may have been earlier than January that the first one came out, but still, it was the Steele dossier that was introduced into those FISA applications that got those wiretaps. I will use that word, that got those wiretaps on Trump. Don't give me that shit about there was no spying on Trump or his campaign. As the Trump campaign and Page have acknowledged, Page ended his formal affiliation with the campaign months before DOJ applied for a warrant. Doesn't mean you couldn't go back on stuff he did during the campaign. Doesn't mean you couldn't look back on previous recordings, on previous records. I'm sure that warrant allowed you to do some previous digging, allowed you to do some backfilling. DOJ, moreover, submitted the initial application less than 3 weeks before the election, even though the FBI's investigation had been ongoing since the end of July 2016. What does that have to do with anything? That has absolutely nothing to do with the substance of the Nunez memo. Nothing. DOJ's warrant request was based on compelling evidence and probable cause to believe Page was knowingly assisting clandestine Russian intelligence activities in the U.S. Again, not one charge, no proof whatsoever, after how many months of being secretly recorded, secretly surveilled by the FBI and the FISA court. Okay, bullet point. Page's connections to Russian government and intelligence officials. The FBI had an independent basis for investigating Page's motivations and actions during the campaign, transition, and following the inauguration. So he wasn't with the campaign anymore, so there's no Russian collusion going on, yet you're still surveilling him. How does that work? As DOJ described in detail to the court, Page had an extensive record as redacted, footnote 8, prior to joining the Trump campaign. He resided in Moscow from 2004 to 2007. Oh my God. You know, Bernie Sanders honeymooned in Moscow. But, since Page lived in Moscow, that's obvious, that he's a Russian spy, of course. And pursued business deals with Russia's state-owned energy company, Gazprom. Oh my God, he did business with the Russians. Bill Clinton took $500,000 for one speech given to a Russian bank with direct ties to Putin. Carter Page pursued a business deal with a Russian energy company. Heaven forbid. As early as redacted, a Russian intelligence officer targeted Page for recruitment. Targeted. Did he do it? Did he fall in? Did he say, yes, I'll be a spy for the Russian government, pay me? No. If he did, you'd have proof. Page showed, redacted. Page remained on the radar of Russian intelligence and the FBI. In 2013, prosecutors indicted 3 other Russian spies, 2 of whom targeted Page for recruitment. The FBI also interviewed Page multiple times about his Russian intelligence contacts, including in March 2016. The FBI's concern and knowledge of Page's activities therefore long predate the FBI's receipt of Steele information. Yeah, but you didn't get the FISA warrant until after the Steele dossier came in. Just throwing stuff out there, trying to get it to stick to the wall, trying to make people think they didn't use the FISA court to prop up the Steele dossier, that they didn't use the Steele dossier to prop up the FISA warrant and the FISA action, the granting of the warrant. Page's suspicious activity during the 2016 campaign. The FISA applications also detail Page's suspicious activity after joining the Trump campaign in March 2016. Redacted. Page traveled to Moscow in July 2016, during which he gave a university commencement address, an honor usually reserved for well-known luminaries. Usually. Not always, not virtually every time, usually. He'd lived in Moscow. He'd done business in Moscow. So why couldn't he give a commencement address? I don't think Putin is allowed to give an address at every single commencement in Russia. You know? I bet he doesn't. Maybe because he's busy. Maybe they knew Page and they said, you know what? This is a nice guy. We've done business with him. He's smart. He knows Russia. He could give this address and really help these students get out there and get on with life in Russia. Maybe. And again, suspicious activity after joining the Trump campaign. He traveled to Moscow. That's suspicious activity these days? How about getting over $100 million transferred to your quote-unquote foundation during the period of time that the Russian atomic private agency, Rosatom, is looking to buy 20% of U.S. uranium assets? Assets that they said they would not ship overseas, and that they did ship overseas, right under the nose of the Atomic Energy Commission, right under the nose of the State Department. In this specific subsection of the application that DOJ refers to Steele's reporting on Page and his alleged coordination with Russian officials, Steele's information about Page was consistent with the FBI's assessment of Russian intelligence efforts to recruit him and his connections to Russian persons of interest. Consistent with assessment, efforts, connections. None of this is proof. And again, where are the charges? If Page is so dirty, where are the charges? In particular, Steele's resources reported that Page met separately while in Russia with Igor Sechin, a close associate of Vladimir Putin and executive chairman of Rosneft, Russia's state-owned oil company, and Igor Divyekin, a senior Kremlin official. Sechin allegedly discussed the prospect of future U.S.-Russia energy cooperation and an associated move to lift Ukraine-related Western sanctions against Russia. What was it that Obama said during that hot mic just before the 2012 election win to the Russian official? I believe, I can't remember if it was the ambassador or someone lower level in the Russian hierarchy. But Obama said something along the lines of, I'll be able to help you more after the election. And now suddenly talking to someone about lifting those Ukrainian sanctions, that's illegal. Divyekin allegedly disclosed to Page that the Kremlin possessed compromising information on Clinton, compromat, and noted the possibility of its being released to candidate number one's campaign. Candidate number one. Oh my God. How many candidates were there? Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm sorry. It was right there. Candidate number one refers to candidate Trump. Why you couldn't just say that at the beginning is ridiculous. This closely tracks what other Russian contacts were informing other Trump foreign policy advisor, George Papadopoulos. And again, Papadopoulos was a low-level scut runner. He wasn't a foreign policy advisor. He was brought on to a foreign policy advisor role, but he was never used. He had nothing. He was constantly trying to pump himself up. And the FBI fell for it. If they had just talked to Sessions or anyone else, they'd have known he was a nothing. But heaven forbid the FBI should actually investigate fully, as opposed to just running to wherever the DNC and Hillary pointed them. In subsequent FISA renewals, DOJ provided additional information obtained through multiple independent sources that corroborated Steele's reporting. Redacted, Pages redacted in Moscow with redacted senior Russian officials, redacted, as well as meeting with Russian officials, redacted, footnote 13. Good Lord. Now you know why this memo was sent back when it first hit Trump. Remember, the Republicans on the committee passed it straight through. That 100% vote for passing through the Democratic memo first time it came up. Here's the thing, though. They knew it was full of all of this information that was completely beyond the pale to release to the public. They knew none of this should make it to the eyes beyond the committee. So by saying yes, all of them saying yes to passing it through, then they could let Trump say, you know what, lawyers have looked at this and this will not pass. You're going to have to take a lot of stuff out of this. Now, Schiff comes out and says, oh my God, look what they're doing to us. They can do whatever they want. But when we try to correct the record, I kind of love that. When we try to correct the record, suddenly our stuff isn't good enough. They're subverting our process. They're subduing what we want to put out there. They're stifling us. Look at all the redactions. And we're only on page 4. This information contradicts Page's November 2nd, 2017 testimony to the committee, in which he initially denied any such meetings and then was forced to admit speaking with Dvorkovich and meeting with Rosneft's Second-Tied investor relations chief, Andrei Baranov. Okay, he lied. That's wrong. But was he under oath? Doesn't say he was under oath. If he was under oath, I guess he would have been arrested. I'm not saying Page is as pure as the Germans. No, he's done some sketchy stuff. I mean, obviously, some of his meetings with the Russians, you're going to have to, give him a look. But a FISA warrant for allegations, none of which were ever proven, after months and months of secret surveillance? No, he's not that bad. The court-appointed surveillance of Page allowed FBI to collect valuable intelligence, none of which we've seen. The FISA renewals demonstrate that the FBI collected important investigative information and leads by conducting court-approved surveillance. For instance, redacted. DOJ also documented evidence that Page, redacted, anticipated, redacted, and repeatedly contacted, redacted, in an effort to present himself as redacted. Footnote 15. Redacted. Footnote 16. Page's efforts to redacted also contradict his sworn testimony to our committee. Okay, now it's sworn testimony, but contradicting versus lying? Are you going to charge him? I don't think so. Again, to bitch and moan that this memo was subsumed, was pushed down by the committee, by the Trump administration, because it was put out by the Democrats. If all these redactions don't tell you just how badly the Democrats wanted this to be pushed back, then I don't think you're paying attention. DOJ's transparency about Christopher Steele. Far from omitting material facts about Steele, as the majority claims, footnote 17, DOJ repeatedly informed the court about Steele's background, credibility, and potential bias. Background. Everyone touts him as a former British intelligence officer, as an officer on the Russian desk. He was a spy. There's his background. Credibility. Up until the Steele dossier has been proven over and over again to be false, he had plenty of credibility. And potential bias. Define potential bias. Did you say this was paid for by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign? Or did you say that Steele has said in the past that he didn't want Trump to win? Which is a very, very low bar for quote unquote, how does it put here? Credibility and potential bias. Very low bar indeed. DOJ explained in detail Steele's prior relationship with and compensation from the FBI. Well, yeah, it's a matter of internal records. If they had said that they hadn't paid him, which earlier in this memo, it said that he wasn't paid. Right? So, God, it's only page 5, and how many lies have I caught them in? Compensation from the FBI, his credibility, reporting history, and source network. the fact of and reason for his termination as a source in late October 2016, and the likely political motivations of those who hired Steele. Likely political motivations of those who hired Steele. Did they just talk about Fusion GPS, which is known as an opposition research company? Did they say, yeah, Fusion GPS has done work for Democrats in the past? Or did they say that what was it, the Washington Examiner? What was the name of that paper that initiated the Steele dossier? I beg your pardon, that initiated the opposition research against Trump, because they were trying to get stuff on him before he could win the primary. And then they backed off after he won the primaries, became the nominee, and then DNC and Hillary took over. So which were they talking about by those political motivations? Because we know they've been saying over and over again that it was the paper that initiated the dossier, not the DNC and Hillary, which is, of course, a complete lie. Bullet point. DOJ was transparent with court about Steele's sourcing. The committee majority, which had earlier accused Obama administration officials of improper unmasking, which is completely true. Look at the number of unmaskings Obama's UN ambassador put out there. 100, over 100. For the UN ambassador, what does she need that information for? She was a cutout. Faults DOJ for not revealing the names of specific U.S. persons and entities in the FISA application and subsequent renewals. Both of those things can be true at the same time. There could have been improper unmaskings, and then they could have hid those names from the FISA warrant. So, yeah, it's pathetic. In fact, DOJ appropriately upheld its long-standing practice of protecting U.S. citizen information by purposely not unmasking U.S. person and entity names unless they were themselves subject of a counterintelligence investigation. Completely contradicts what you just said. Completely contradicts it. DOJ instead used generic identifiers that provided the court with more than sufficient information to understand the political context of Steele's research. Generic identifiers. More than sufficient information. These are weasel words. That's your opinion, Schiff. That's your opinion. In an extensive explanation to the court, DOJ discloses that Steele was approached by an identified U.S. person who indicated to source that a U.S.-based law firm had hired the identified U.S. person to conduct research regarding candidate one's ties to Russia. The identified U.S. person and source number one have a long-standing business relationship. Business relationship. So what? And it just says to conduct research regarding the candidate's ties to Russia. Well, we know that because, once again, Hillary stated in the WikiLeaks that they were going to blame Russia. So that's pathetic on its face right there. And a U.S.-based law firm had hired the identified U.S. person. Oh, that's right. Perkins Coie was the cutout for Steele and Fusion GPS. I'd forgotten that name. Yeah, there's your law firm. So the Hillary campaign did not disclose all of the money they were paying Perkins Coie, by the way, a direct contradiction, a direct violation of Federal Election Commission law. They may only get a fine for that. I haven't heard what's going to come down, but it would be funny if it was a large fine because the Democrat Party is broke. They barely have enough money to keep the lights on at the national headquarters. They're not going to have any money for the midterm elections across state lines. This is going to be hilarious. The identified U.S. person hired source number one to conduct this research. The identified U.S. person never advised source number one as to the motivation behind the research into candidate number one's ties to Russia. The FBI speculates that the identified U.S. person was likely looking for information that could be used to discredit candidate one's campaign. Likely? That's an incredible weasel word right there. They were looking for information, was definitely looking for information, not likely. And again, motivation behind the research into candidate number one's ties to Russia. There were no ties to Russia. Made up by the Clinton campaign. Known months before this was approached to FISA. Was that mentioned? Were the WikiLeaks emails mentioned at all? No. Contrary to the majority's assertion that DOJ fails to mention that Steele's research was commissioned by political actors to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia, DOJ, in fact, informed the court accurately that Steele was hired by politically motivated U.S. persons and entities, and that his research appeared intended for use to discredit Trump's campaign. Likely, let's go back to that. Let's put both of these up at the same time. Let me scroll here. Research was commissioned by political actors to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. That's Schiff's wording. Here in the actual application, we have the FBI speculates that the identified U.S. person was likely looking for information that could be used to discredit candidate number one's campaign. That is completely different from saying that it was the DOJ was informed that the court that Steele was hired by politically motivated U.S. persons and entities, that his research appeared intended for use to discredit Trump's campaign. Up here, you're talking about candidate number one's ties to Russia, and instead you use the bold lettering for use to discredit Trump's campaign. Again, you're not sticking to the narrative here, buddy. You're not staying to your own words as they're printed on this page. Okay, next bullet point. DOJ explained the FBI's reasonable basis for finding Steele credible. Can't wait to read this. The applications correctly described Steele as redacted. The applications also reviewed Steele's multi-year history of credible reporting on Russia and other matters, including information DOJ used in criminal proceedings. Past performance does not indicate, past results do not indicate future performance, as they say on the ads for brokerage companies. Just because he was credible in the past doesn't mean this piece of crap he handed over. Come on, Russian prostitutes pissing on a bed while Trump goes into the bathroom to scream, "I hate black people." He's still credible after that. He's still credible after having been fired for trying to leak this thing to newspapers and e-outlets, and then bragging to Mother Jones that he's an FBI informant while he's still on the payroll. Credible? Senior FBI and DOJ officials have repeatedly affirmed to the committee the reliability and credibility of Steele's reporting, an assessment also reflected in the FBI's underlying source documents. The FBI has undertaken a rigorous process to vet allegations from Steele's reporting, including with regard to Page. So, Page is in the FISA memo. Page is in the Steele dossier. And it was used to spy on him. But the only other thing they had that they're admitting to is Papadopoulos' drunken conversation. They haven't provided proof of anything else. That's all they got to go on. Ties with Russians and a conversation that should never have been held as credible by someone who was not a part of the campaign in any substantive sense whatsoever. The FBI properly notified the FISA court after it terminated Steele as a source for making unauthorized disclosures to the media. The majority cites no evidence that the FBI, prior to filing its initial October 21st, 2016 application, actually knew or should have known of any allegedly inappropriate media contacts by Steele, nor do they cite evidence that Steele disclosed to Yahoo details included in the FISA warrant, since the British court filings to which they refer to do not address what Steele may have said to Yahoo. Okay, is that that's after the first application though? So they're still leaning on the document. They're still leaning on that memo. They're just saying that they had to fire Steele because he's a blabbermouth. I'm sure they said nothing about the fact that they weren't able to find anything in this dossier that was credible, that nothing aside from public information had been backed up whatsoever. I'm sure they leaned on it real heavily because the Papadopoulos conversation could not have been all that strong. DOJ informed the court in its renewals that the FBI acted promptly to terminate Steele after learning from him, after DOJ filed the first warrant application, that he had discussed his work with a media outlet in late October. That does not automatically disqualify the quote-unquote credibility of his memo after, again, the court hearing over and over again how reliable of a source he had been in the past. This conversation with Mother Jones and Yahoo and all these other outlets did not in any way impugn his credibility. It just impugned his ability to keep his mouth shut. And besides, the FBI had no choice to disclose that because that information was coming out anyway. And again, Steele's credible. This is a credible document. We're 100% behind it. Yes, we had to let him go because he was talking to a newspaper, to a news outlet. But we still trust his work. I bet me that is not how it went down. Bet me. The January 2018 renewal further explained to the court that Steele told the FBI that he made his unauthorized media disclosure because of his frustration at Director Comey's public announcement shortly before the election that the FBI reopened its investigation into candidate Clinton's email use. So, they had talked about potential bias. And here this guy is going to the news because he was upset that Comey was doing his job and discussing the fact that the email investigation had been reopened. An investigation that's still ongoing and should result in an indictment. Will she ever go to jail? No, she's never going to go to jail. But I would love to see her convicted and then Trump pardon her. That would be epic. DOJ never paid Steele for the dossier. Well, this ought to be good. The majority asserts that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for his research on Trump, but neglects to mention that the payment was canceled and never made. As the FBI records and committee testimony confirms, although the FBI initially considered compensation, Steele ultimately never received payment from the FBI for any dossier-related information. I know that the FBI offered him $50,000 for continued research. Maybe that didn't go through. But they had authorized that payment. So Nunez was not wrong in stating that. Perhaps Schiff has it right that the payment was canceled and never made, but it shows the FBI was willing to treat this guy as an incredibly credible source. So again, when they're presenting this memo, this piece of dirt, to the FISA court, are they saying, we decided not to pay him even though we had said we were going to initially? No, they only didn't pay him because of his talking to Yahoo and Mother Jones. They were totally in the bag to give him money for this continued research. And it was only $50,000. Steele made how much money putting this out together? I've heard upwards of $160,000 for a piece of work that he never even had direct contact with his sources for. It was all through cutouts, all through intermediaries. He never even went to Russia. DOJ accurately informed the court that Steele had been an FBI confidential human source since redacted, for which he was compensated, redacted, by the FBI, payment for previously shared information of value unrelated to the FBI's Russia investigation. Well, I'm sure that came up. We trust him so much, we've been paying him. He's been with us since redacted, probably while he was still with the British Secret Service. Additional omissions, errors, and distortions in the majority's memorandum. DOJ appropriately provided the court with a comprehensive explanation of Russia's election interference including evidence that Russia courted another Trump campaign advisor, Papadopoulos, and that Russian agents previewed their hack and dissemination of stolen emails. Where did that come from? There was no hack. WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, those are the people who put out those emails. Yes, they were stolen, technically, but they were not hacked. They were probably just transferred to a thumb drive. Easy. It would have taken not even a minute. And it was proven, if you look at the VIPS assessment of how this transfer took place, it's obvious that the data rate was so fast that it could not have been over anything but a direct connection to the server. And I mean right into the server, not over a landline. It had to have been direct connection. And so this sentence, comprehensive explanation of election interference. Again, if you had a comprehensive explanation of the interference, why weren't these people rolled up then? Why was it allowed to continue? They did misinformation after the election was over, yet they were unimpeded. They did Hillary camp. They did pro-Trump meetings, pro-Trump campaign rallies, and they did anti-Trump campaign rallies. I believe once they were held on the same day in two separate cities. CNN just went after a poor 70-year-old woman who was at a Florida rally that was was set up by some of these Russian trolls. But everyone she knew in that group was an American. Everyone who went to that rally was an American. But CNN tried to paint her as a Russian stooge. Meanwhile, Michael Moore shows up to a Russian organized rally, an anti-Trump rally. I don't see CNN at Michael Moore's door. In claiming that there is no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos, the majority misstates the reason why DOJ specifically explained Russia's courting of Papadopoulos. Misstates. Papadopoulos' interaction, there's that extra S again, with Russian agents, coupled with real-time evidence of Russian election interference, provided the court with a broader context in which to evaluate Russia's clandestine activities and Page's history and alleged contact with Russian officials. Again, alleged. There's no there. They got nothing. Yet they were able to continue FISA warrants over and over again. Where was all that evidence they were piling up? And Russia's courting of Papadopoulos, was that meeting with the history professor in London? I believe it was a history professor who knows Russians. Is that the courting? Seriously? Moreover, since only Page redacted, no evidence of a separate conspiracy between him and Papadopoulos was required. Pretty thin. Pretty freaking thin. DOJ would have been negligent in omitting vital information about Papadopoulos and Russia's concerted efforts. Okay, I was speaking a little too unclearly earlier when I was saying that Papadopoulos had only had that one meeting with the Australian ambassador. I believe he was the ambassador. But anyway, it was a drunken conversation. It's just two guys full of beer or whatever rattling on. Not in any way a credible source. I mean, if you and I, any one of you out there, or both of you, I should say, if both of you out there and I had drinks and we were talking and I said, you know what? I sleep around on my wife all the time. Really, I do. Nah, not really, but I could if I wanted to. Would you go to my wife and say, wow, man, he was really in the tank, but he says he cheats on you when you were as drunk as I was? Seriously? I mean, you'd have to be pretty pathetic to do that. And that's what I think of this Australian official. He takes a conversation over drinks and goes to the FBI. Maybe under his laws he had to. But did he state purposely just how in the bag they were? Does he go on about how unreliable someone with that many drinks in them can be? I'm sure the FBI didn't care. In its court's filings, DOJ made proper use of news coverage. The majority falsely claims that the FISA materials relied heavily on a September 23, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff, and that this article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself. Oh, this ought to be good. I can't wait to see how they spin this. In fact, DOJ referenced Isikoff's article alongside another article the majority fails to mention, not to provide separate corroboration for Steele's reporting, but instead to inform the court of Page's public denial of his suspected meetings in Moscow, which Page also echoed in a September 25th, 2016 letter to FBI Director Comey, redacted. All right, let's look at that again. Referenced Isikoff's article alongside another article, not to provide separate corroboration, but instead to inform the court of Page's public denial. But where did that come from? Where did that public denial come from? Did it come from the dossier? Yeah, I'll bet it did. So they are using this to support a narrative that Page is lying about his suspected meetings. Suspected meetings. They can't even prove they happened. The majority's reference to Bruce Orr is misleading. Oh, misleading. The majority mischaracterizes Bruce Orr's role, overstates the significance of his interactions with Steele, and misleads about the time frame of Orr's communication with the FBI. In late November 2016, Orr informed the FBI of his prior professional relationship with Steele and information that Steele shared with him, including Steele's concern about Trump being compromised by Russia. He also described his wife's contract work with Fusion GPS, the firm that hired Steele separately. This occurred weeks after the election and more than a month after the court approved the initial FISA application. The majority describes Bruce Orr as a senior DOJ official who worked closely with the Deputy Attorney General Yates and later Rosenstein in order to imply that Orr was somehow involved in the FISA process, but there is no indication this is the case. I believe there is direct evidence to the contrary of that, Mr. Schiff. Nice try, though. Nice try. Bruce Orr is a well-respected career professional whose portfolio is drugs and organized crime, not counterintelligence. Yeah, but his wife's profile is as a Russian speaker working for an organization which does opposition research, and in fact was digging up dirt on Trump. None of it which was true, but somehow she got her information from Fusion GPS to her husband, who took it to the FBI. This is known. And on his forms with the FBI, with the DOJ, he does not disclose his wife's job, where she works, or that she's paid. The conflict of interest form that he's supposed to fill out leaves all that blank. They're saying he informed, or informed the FBI of his prior professional relationship with Steele. Prior professional relationship. I'm almost positive that Orr presented the dossier well before November. And let's remember, this ball started rolling in mid-September. So perhaps Orr was in there at the beginning. Yes, he was. And then this meeting with the FBI came later, once the Steele dossier was completely in place, and he could afford to say, by the way, this, and this, all the while never relaying it on his conflict of interest forms with the DOJ. These things can happen at the same time, Schiff. There is no evidence that he would have known about the Page FISA application and their contents. He didn't have to know about the FISA applications and their contents. All he had to do is bring the Steele dossier to the FBI. It was out of his hands after that. It didn't matter what he knew after that. It had no bearing on the FISA warrant application. His wife worked on it, supposedly. I don't believe there's any direct proof of that, but I'd say there's pretty good confirmation that she did. His wife worked on it, brought it to her Bruce's attention, Bruce brought it to the FBI's attention, never told the DOJ that his wife worked for a opposition research company, that she was paid by them, that he had a conflict of interest because of that relationship. So what if he didn't know about the FISA warrant? The majority's assertions, moreover, are irrelevant in determining the veracity of Steele's reporting. No, I'd say they're incredibly relevant. By the time Orr debriefs with the FBI, it has already terminated Steele as a source and was independently corroborating Steele's reporting about Page's activities. Alleged activities, supposed meetings, business deals with people that it's legal to do business with. We're not at war with Russia, as much as you people would like us to be, as much as you're hammering for us to be at war with Russia. No, that's not the case. It's legal for American businessmen to do business with Russian businessmen and women, both. Pick your gender. Bruce Orr took the initiative to inform the FBI of what he knew, and the majority does him a grave disservice by suggesting he is part of some malign conspiracy. Grave disservice. All indications are that he is part of a malign conspiracy, to use Schiff's words, and you've presented nothing to take away from that. Finally, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page's text messages are irrelevant to the FISA application. The majority gratuitously includes reference to Strzok and Page at the end of their memorandum in an effort to imply that political bias infected the FBI's investigation and DOJ's FISA applications. In fact, neither Strzok nor Page served as affiants on the applications. Both were the product of extensive and senior DOJ and FBI review. No, I'd say they're actually pretty relevant because they're showing how much in the bag the FBI was when it comes to the election. Remember, Strzok was a senior FBI official, high up. He was the lead investigator on the Hillary email investigation, none of which resulted in indictments for lying to the FBI, even though all of them did. And he was high up in the Trump campaign. The Trump investigation, the Mueller investigation, until those emails, those text messages were leaked. I'll take that back. They were not leaked. They were published by the Inspector General. I apologize for that misstatement. Still, not until those came out publicly was any of this held against Strzok and Page. I'm sure no one knew that they were having an affair and that they were totally behind Hillary during the entire election and had a very, very large hard-on against Trump. I'm sure no one knew that. In fact, in demonizing both career professionals, they were having an affair. They're senior FBI officials and they're having an affair on their spouses. Maybe demonizing is too strong a word there. Maybe impugning? Would impugning be good enough for a Schiff? In demonizing both career professionals, the majority accuses them of orchestrating leaks to the media, a serious charge, omits inconvenient text messages in which they critiqued a wide range of other officials and candidates from both parties. So what? I'm sure they were against Bernie and Jill and Johnson because they were going to take away from Hillary's votes because Hillary screwed over Bernie, and those hurt Bernie supporters were going to be going after Hillary. Some of them voted for Hillary, some didn't. Maybe the majority voted for Hillary. I don't know. But I'm sure Strzok and Page had it in for Bernie, just like Hillary and the DNC had it in for Bernie. I mean, that stands to reason. I don't see how that is getting them off the hook. Does not disclose that FBI Deputy Director McCabe testified to the committee that he had no idea what Page and Strzok were referring to in their insurance policy texts. No one's ever lied to a committee before. And ignores Strzok's acknowledged role in preparing a public declaration, by then Director Comey about former Secretary Clinton's extreme carelessness in handling classified information, which greatly damaged Clinton's public reputation in the days just prior to the presidential election. I cannot believe he included this. The words extreme carelessness were substituted for negligence, gross negligence. And gross negligence is the standard for criminal proceedings, for indictment. Strzok replaced gross negligence with extreme carelessness. And they're showing this as being laudatory to Strzok. He was so in Hillary's purse that he changed an official FBI document to get her off the hook with Comey's knowledge, and I'm sure collusion, if I can use that word, because it was collusion, because they did it in secret. That's pathetic. How can you possibly hold up his changing of an official document to let someone who's clearly broken the law, off the hook, and make it seem like he's a paragon of virtue because of that? Does Schiff think we don't know anything about Strzok, that we haven't read anything since last year? All right, you don't have to stick around for this, but I'm going to go over the footnotes just to be thorough. Footnote number 1. Let's see. Letter to HPSCI Chairman Devin Nunez, Assistant Attorney General Stephen Boyd, DOJ, January 24th, 2018. Letter to Chairman Nunez, Boyd, also confirmed in writing to minority staff, DOJ, and FBI terms of review, to quote, the department has accommodated HPSCI's oversight request by allowing repeated in-camera reviews of the material in an appropriate secure facility under the general stipulations that 1, the chair or his delegate and the ranking member or his delegate and 2 staff each with appropriate security clearances be allowed to review on behalf of the committee. So it says right there that Nunez was allowed or to pick a staff, and Schiff was allowed to pick a staff. But it's widely known that the Democrats never went to look. They didn't even want to read the Nunez memo at first. In fact, I believe it was open to the House as a whole for how long? And only a handful of Democrats read it during that period of time. Head in the sand much? 2, that the review take place in a reading room set up at the department, and 3, that the documents not leave the physical control of the department, and 5, that the review opportunities be bipartisan in nature. It went from 3 to 5. Though we originally requested that no notes be taken, in acknowledgement of a request by the committee and recognizing that the volume of documents had increased with time, the department eventually allowed notes to be taken to facilitate HPSCI's review. Also, initial reviews of the material include short briefings by department officials to put the material in context and to provide some additional information. It's all there, Schiff. It's all there. Blows away your entire we didn't get a chance to look at it narrative. Email from Stephen Boyd to HPSCI minority staff, January 18th, emphasis supplied. 3, a letter to Nunez, Boyd, January 24th. Number 5, Papadopoulos' October 5th, 2017 guilty plea adds further texture to this initial tip by clarifying that a Russian agent told Papadopoulos that they have dirt on her. The Russians had emails of Clinton. They have thousands of emails. U.S. versus George Papadopoulos. Okay. Blowing smoke. Because none of that was true. None of that was true. Now remember, there were some 30,000 emails of Clinton's missing after she used, BleachBit to scrub her servers, her email servers. And Clinton I'm sorry for doing that. And Trump had said jokingly in a press conference, hey, Russians, if you've got Hillary's emails, looking forward to seeing them. I hope you got them. It was a complete joke. Who says the Russians couldn't have gone to Papadopoulos? Because there's no time frame given here. There's no time frame given as to when this conversation happened. So the Russians could have easily, through a cutout, which was a cutout, said to Papadopoulos, hey, we got him. You want to see him? You want some compromat on Hillary? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Even if they had him. Number 7. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed all the redactions. Number 4, their footnotes are redacted, for crying out loud. Footnote number 4 is redacted. Footnote number 6 is redacted. Number 7, under the special counsel's direction, Flynn and Papadopoulos have both pleaded guilty to lying to federal investigators and are cooperating with the special counsel's investigation, while Manafort and his longtime aide, former Trump deputy campaign manager Rick Gates, have been indicted on multiple counts and are awaiting trial. And what did they plead guilty to, Flynn and Papadopoulos? Lying to the FBI. What do you have on them regarding Trump-Russia collusion? Nothing. You have zero. Because there is nothing. And you know it. But you're muddying the waters here by throwing out these guilty pleas and the Manafort indictment and the Gates indictment. Again, dirty dealings. They were dirty. I'll admit to that. But they were doing this before they were on the Trump campaign. And they were only on the Trump campaign for a cup of coffee. I'm sure once Trump got wind of what they'd been doing with Ukraine and Turkey, Trump said, you know what, you're going to have to go. Sorry, can't have you hanging around the campaign. And he was right. They let Papadopoulos go too. They fired Flynn. Trump cleaned house. But you're not going to give him credit for that. You're going to use this guilt by association. These counts don't even matter to the Russian collusion case. These are procedural crimes. These are not actual espionage crimes. These are not crimes against the election rules. You've got nothing. 8, redacted. 9, redacted. 10, most redacted. So it's quoting a court case here, obviously. See also U.S. versus Evgeny Burkov, blah, 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 blah. It's from 2015. Again, well before the campaign. 11, Department of Justice Foreign Intelligence Surveillance and Court Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application, October 21st, 2016. Repeated and subsequent renewal applications. Right. All the way up through, what was it, 2017, up to September of 2017. The temporary surveillance. Number 12, Department of Justice Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application, June 29th, 2017. It's a birthday of someone I know. Number 13, redacted. Number 14, portion redacted. The FBI and broader intelligence community's high confidence assessment that the Russian government was engaged in a covert interference. It says inference. No, it does say interference. Excuse me, the type is so small. In a covert interference campaign to influence the 2016 election, including that Russian intelligence actors, quote, compromised the DNC and WikiLeaks, subsequently leaked in July 2016 a trove of DNC emails. No proof. No proof that that was the Russians. Proof that it wasn't the Russians is in abundance, as I've stated before. Remember, the DNC, Clinton campaign, refused to allow the FBI to see their servers. The only possible Russian hacking evidence came from CrowdStrike, a discredited digital examination company. They went into the servers. They found, quote unquote, fingerprints of Russians. And anyone who knows anything about the WikiLeaks of the CIA hacking material knows that it's incredibly easy to scrub your presence and leave the fingerprints, the digital fingerprints of someone else behind. So even if the Russians had hacked the emails, they wouldn't have left their own fingerprint on it. They would have made it look like somebody else. And again, CrowdStrike is a private company. They had one look at those servers. We don't even know if they were given the actual servers or if they were given a doctored copy of those servers. We have no way of knowing that. We do know that a Clinton campaign official gave a false copy of the servers I should say a DNC official, gave a false copy of the servers involved in the Debbie Wasserman Schultz Awan Brothers scandal to the FBI. I believe he is now the Attorney General of California. No quid pro quo there whatsoever. And again, Russian intelligence actors compromised the DNC and WikiLeaks. No, as I said, no proof. Russian government was engaged in a covert interference campaign to influence the election. If they've got all this confidence, why weren't there any charges brought? Why didn't they stop it? Because they knew they'd win. They knew Hillary would win, and it wouldn't matter. Why bring up dirt on the campaign and sully the election results of your favorite girl, your queen? But Trump's elected. Suddenly it's all hands on deck. Let's get these guys for trolling. It's not against governments to troll other governments. It's not against the U.S. government to troll Americans. Obama saw that. Those 13 indictments, aside from the wire fraud and the identity theft, and that guy in California who sold them the identities, I'll bet he was happy he wasn't getting paid in pesos and chickens for a change. Those are the crimes. That's it. Department of Justice Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application, October 21st, 2016, pages 6 through 7. Repeated and updated with new information and subsequent renewal applications. What new information? Were those perhaps the new names that had been unmasked by the Obama administration illegally? No, I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. DOJ Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application, June 29th. 15, DOJ Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court application, June 29th. 16, same. Don't they know how to use IBID? HPSCI Majority Memorandum, number 17, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, abuses of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, January 18th, 2018, enumerating omissions of fact regarding Steele and his activities from the page FISA application. Again, you haven't proved that any of that did not happen the way the Nunez memo said it did. You've alleged, but you haven't proved it. Maybe if there weren't so many freaking redactions, we'd know better. But obviously you can't write a simple memorandum without trying to completely blow intelligence gathering and secret court documents out of the water. Personally, I'd love to see Trump declassify the FISA applications as much as possible anyway and clear all this up. I'm sure he's waiting for someone else to do it so it doesn't look like he's putting a hand in the investigation. He could, but I understand why he probably isn't. Let's see, 18, Glenn Simpson. Oh, there's a unimpeachable source. Glenn Simpson from Fusion GPS. Look up his testimony. It's pathetic. Christopher Steele, Ibid. Perkins Coie, there they are. Donald Trump. Department of Justice, number 22, FISCA, October 21st, repeated and subsequent renewed applications. 22, good Lord. HPSCI Majority Memorandum, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Abuses, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, court application, number 24, repeated in subsequent renewals. 25, interview of Andrew McCabe, blah, 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 blah. 27, interview of FBI agent, House Permanent Select Committee. 28, Department of Justice, FISA court application, repeated. 29, HPSCI Majority Memorandum. Quote, the page FISA application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos, but there is no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos. Right, but you used Papadopoulos' information to spy on Page. HPSCI Majority Memorandum, blah, 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 blah. Neither Isikoff nor Yahoo are specifically identified in the FISA materials, in keeping with the FBI's general practice of not identifying U.S. persons. So again, You're saying that the Obama administration unmasked people, and then they don't unmask people. These aren't persons; they're outlets. They're news outlets. And even if you didn't specifically identify them, you didn't have to. You identified the people involved. Isikoff with, was it Mother Jones, I believe? Or was it Yahoo? No, I think it was Mother Jones. And then Yahoo. So you're not identifying either one of those, but you're identifying the other parts of those processes. It doesn't matter. You used identification of these people. So not unmasking is just a complete red herring. Number 31, Department of Justice, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, yada, yada, Carter Page, letter to FBI Director James Comey. And finally, the end, 33, interview of Andrew McCabe, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, December 19th, 2017. Yes, wasn't McCabe, forced out early? Yeah, he was. So how you could possibly say that he's an unimpeachable witness is beyond me. Well, there you have it. That is all 10 pages, including majority redactions of the Democrat HPSC minority report. I'll praise Philip K. Dick. Their response to the Nunez memo entitled Correcting the Record. For the last time, the irony of using that term when you think about David Brock. It's just, oh my God. So anyway, well, thank you all for listening. For those of you who stayed as long as you did, congratulations. You have the Iron Butt and Iron Ear Award. Until next time, be well. And as always, thank you for your attention.
Oh, that was a good one.